Fit India series on Ace the Sales podcast. Join your host Roshni Baronia as she goes behind the scenes on what sells and how to sell in the fitness and wellness industry. Listen in to learn and leap ahead in your business.
Hey there, thank you so much for joining me today on Ace the Sales podcast. I'm so excited to have Taru with us today. She's a certified Pilates instructor and owner of two thriving Pilates studios in Gurgaon, going by the name of RedMat Pilates. With over 12 plus years of running these studios, Taru has lots to tell and teach us about the complexities of running a profitable fitness studio, how to sustain substantial fixed costs of a retail business, and how to do business pivots in the post pandemic times. But before we dive in, a quick reminder to follow Ace the Sales podcast wherever you are getting it, because your small gesture will help us in a big way to take this show to many more women entrepreneurs just like yourself. So now let's bring Taru to the mic. Hello, Taru. How are you feeling today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, and welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have this conversation because running a retail business has always sounded and seemed very daunting to me. So just to discuss with you that it's going to be amazing. So
Yes, and
yeah,
I'm looking forward to having some of my own learnings through you today.
yes, I think when we discuss things and as entrepreneurs, we get an opportunity to reflect back on our journeys also. So yeah, I hope that happens for you also today. So let's start from your journey of
hmm
like how did you start with the studio? Because I remember in our conversation earlier you said that it is something which was your personal need. You were looking for something which helps you in 40 plus health and fitness time, and that's when you discovered Pilates. So let's start from there. How did you discover Pilates? How did you fall in love with it? And the most important part, which I'm curious about it, how did that love transition into a business idea? Because that takes a lot of motivation and money as well, right?
Yeah.
So
Um,
yeah.
well, I have an interesting story to how I came upon Pilates in the first place. I used to be working out in my early 30s. I used to be doing aerobics and yoga and things like that till I had my second child. And I realized that my usual energy levels were very low, my stamina was very low. I was not feeling 100% myself. And so I started experimenting with more movement modalities. So I did yoga. I did yoga for 6 months. And mind you, this is right after having my second child. And within 6 months, I had three injuries. I broke my wrist, I broke my back, I broke my knee. And so I took a break and I realized that maybe this is not something that my body needs right now. And then I'm talking about 15 years ago. So the options of exercises were very limited. So I switched to aerobics. I think I got faintish in the second session. And again, I realized probably that was not what my body needed at that point in time.
Yeah.
So again, I took a break. And then I found strength training and I started going to the gym. And I had this gym trainer who was teaching me. And I really liked what I was doing. But every session would leave me so sore, Roshni, that I would come back and I would sleep for 3 hours. And then I would not be able to move out of the bed for the next 2 days because my body was so tired and so sore from the workout till I had to
Okay.
get up and push myself again for the next workout after 2 days. So I figured that I wasn't feeling great, you
It was
know,
not something your body was accepting
not at
also.
all, not at all. And
Okay.
simultaneously, at the same time, I have a lot of friends who were going through the same journey as me. We just had children. We were trying to balance work with whatever we were doing and trying to kind of work through our bodies not feeling 100%. And so I got down to doing a little bit of research on the internet and I came across this thing called Pilates. Okay. And whatever I read about Pilates at that point in time, it spoke about how it strengthened your deep core muscles, how it was so great for your back. In fact, how Pilates is how widely used in rehabilitation of injuries across the world by physiotherapists, and how people who were 15 were doing Pilates as well as people who were 95 were doing Pilates. And somehow intuitively, I knew that this workout is what I need to do. So my hunt started. I found
Okay.
a teacher who was actually a yoga teacher who had just adopted a little bit of Pilates that she knew. and she was teaching it somewhere. And I started attending her classes. And within 6 months, I
Wow.
felt I had a resurge of my energy. I was feeling better. I was sleeping a lot better. I was less irritable. And I used to
Okay.
go and practice 6 days a week because she would not teach on Sundays. Had she been teaching on Sundays, I would have been there on a Sunday as well.
Oh my.
So,
So taking gap for 2 days after a gym workout, you were now
yes,
ready to go on Sunday also.
yeah. And
So that's the kind of like I feel it is more about not only your body but also emotionally, mentally, something that you say yes to, like a hell yes kind of a thing, because you feel good. Like you said, you feel energized, and that's why you want to continue it. So I'm sure
yeah.
like then you reeled more into studying about the subject a
Yeah,
lot
so
more.
I got so much into it that my friends started asking me to teach them. Now,
Oh,
given
okay.
my experience of all the injuries that I had been through, I was very clear that I want to be certified properly before I started teaching
Right.
anybody, you
Makes
know.
sense. Yeah.
And at that point in time, you have to be mindful that there was also this big mental block against women going into the fitness world and becoming teachers because traditionally
And
it was
this was
mostly
how
men.
many years back?
I'm talking now about 13 years ago,
Wow. Yeah,
almost
I'm
14 years
sure.
ago when I just started my journey of studying. And
Mm,
nobody had even heard of an internationally certified teacher. You were
yes,
either a yoga
yes.
teacher as a woman or you were an aerobics teacher. That's it. You were not seeing too many strength training teachers if you walked into a gym. Very, very rare.
Very rare.
Yeah,
I still
so
don't see so like
I
of
know.
course we do have fitness influencers now and instructors now female but yeah for
Like
14
in a
15 years
small
back
gym and all, you will still not
no,
find women
not
teachers.
fine. Yeah, the
Yeah.
local gyms you will still not
Yeah,
find.
yeah. Though
Yes,
the landscape is
definitely.
definitely changing, I have to give credit.
So yeah, thanks for sharing your journey, Taru, because you rightly said that it's a personal discovery, personal need, and personal realization that what I need, and then it extends to a business solution probably which might help more people. But I really want to reel into the fact that when you started it, because it was from an intention of this has worked for me, now more people want to learn from me, okay, now I am certified. But whatever the initial challenges that you came across when you just thought about starting a studio?
Um, One is it was a completely different space for me. I was in the corporate world. I was in the world of banking,
Yeah.
and then I was running a TV production house. So fitness as a vertical by itself was completely alien to me. That's one. Two, as a
Okay.
challenge, everybody only knew about yoga. Pilates as a vertical, as a movement form, was completely unknown. Nobody knew about it. And
Right.
because Pilates on the mat looks so similar to yoga on the mat, that explaining that differentiation was a big hurdle initially. And then the third thing was I was quite determined that whatever I wanted to do had to be women-centric only. So there was a lot of,
Okay.
I would say, curiosity around that. That why would you choose to do something which is so
Okay.
women-centric? Because there was nothing like that,
Yeah, why?
So one, I was planning to
Okay.
bring in a completely new form of exercise and introduce it. Secondly, I was already
Mm-hmm.
determined to make it very niche, right?
Hmm.
That's a little bit of a challenge when you're starting off with a new business.
Yeah. So what made you do that decision? That why did you want to keep it women centric only?
Because I saw the need, the unspoken need of so many women struggling with their health, not finding the
Right.
answers. Forget about finding the answers. They didn't even know that was a problem.
Interesting.
Like
Yeah.
now it's changing, but it's taken a decade of people talking about it for me to see the change, where women are more aware of their own health before they decide to go and have a baby. So pre-pregnancy health or just the post-pregnancy rehabilitation, for example. or just simply talking about the changes that a young girl goes through adolescence, or the changes a woman in her late 40s will go through because she's hitting menopause. All of these are such stigmatized topics that people know that they're going through it, but because it's such a stigma around it that they don't want to speak about it, but they're suffering through it, right? So I kind of saw all that at a very small scale, to be very honest, not as how I see it today. But at that point in time, I knew that this was the segment I wanted to work with. And I'm very pro women in terms of whatever it comes to. Yeah,
Super.
yeah. And I
Yes.
also, you know,
And I think that is required because until unless it's been my personal experience also that until unless we give that safe space for women to speak up and just to tell what they need, it's very difficult for them to just come out and tell that what they require, what their body
yes,
requires, because again conditioning and limiting beliefs have so been around so much that initiative like you have taken to start up a business which is primarily focusing on them is required, because until unless that happens, like women will not find a safe space to just work out or just know what their body needs, discover and find that also. So tell me the experience that happens when you started this women only studio. So what was the experience like? What were the like first few walk-ins asking you, and how was it the initial years?
so I started very, very small. I started in my condominium clubhouse where I printed a few flyers
Okay.
and I distributed it, and I got a couple of inquiries. And because you're a, bootstrap company, you are the
Yeah,
salesperson, you are
yeah.
the trader, you are the cleaning person, you are
Yes, from
you
the
are
peon to
everything in
CEO.
all in one. So I was handling all the calls. I was the one who
Yeah.
was doing the creative design for the flyers that were going out. I was also doing
Wow.
my own studies at the
Wow.
same time, because to be a Pilates teacher, you really have to put in a lot of hours. So I remember I started off
Yeah.
with three people, and two of which
Okay.
were inquiries, and the third one was my friend who had been blackmailed into coming into the class because I needed people in the class. So I was like, you have to be there. This is
I'm
support.
sure.
So, and I remember teaching my first class, and they kind of walked out saying, "Yeah, thank you, nice." And I couldn't figure whether it went out well or it went very badly. And and I had
Okay.
started off with two batches.
Okay.
So I remember I started off with a 8:30, 9:30, and a 9:30, 10:30 kind of a batch in the morning. I got three people for the 8:30 batch. Nobody came for the 9:30 batch. And so I waited, and that kept happening for almost, I think, 10 days when nobody came for the 9:30
Okay.
batch. And I remember sitting back one day within a week, 10 days of doing this, and saying, maybe I'm being too ambitious, and maybe I should just sort of think and rethink about what is it that I'm trying to do. Maybe just stick to one batch in the morning. And Rashmi, I think 6 months down the line, I was running three batches, all full with a wait list, with more demand for
Wow.
classes. So
Wow.
I was running a 7:30, 8:30, 9:30, and then I was running an evening
Wow.
batch. And the demand just kept growing. I think women,
Wow. So what happened? What clicked?
I think
Like
a couple of things clicked.
your flyers flew off
The
the
flyers
shelf.
definitely flew, and I think what you hit upon in the first thing, a safe space for women. Suddenly, there was a community of women who
Huh.
could come together and talk about their bodies without any shame or having to hold back. So, if they were cramping that day, they would say, "Listen, I can't do too much because I'm cramping," which is such a rarity by itself. And then having a community of women who were on the same journey as you, and then also, I think having a certified teacher who could understand, because, day one, one person came to me and said, I have a shoulder injury because I hurt myself during Surya Namaskars. The other one came and said, I have a disc herniation. I broke my back doing something and now I can't do a couple. To be able to identify their need and immediately change it within the same exercise that the whole group is doing was a rarity. And then to be able to do all of those movements without experiencing more pain, and in fact seeing a decent recovery of your injury, being given out modifications in a group of 10 people, and being taken care of in that big group,
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
was a big game changer. People had never experienced that before. Because
Yes.
when you go to the gym or you do a class, you're doing the same thing as everybody else. And the teacher will be like, do
Yes.
whatever you
Yes.
can. Or, yeah, you can do it.
Whatever you can.
But you
Yeah.
have an
Yeah.
injury.
At max, just look at
Huh.
others, what others are doing, and
And
just
आपसे नहीं हो रहा है तो
copy
आप
paste
छोड़
if
दो,
you
आप
can.
रेस्ट करो. But
Huh.
to be able
Rest.
to,
True.
to be given a
Wow.
modification that suits your body or your energy level that day or
Hmm.
your particular fitness requirement in a group session, I think that was a big rarity, right?
Wow. So, along with the community, safe space, also personalized
Absolutely.
attention. So,
Absolutely. And
yeah,
variation.
awesome. So,
And
from
variation. And
and
variation.
variation, yes, yes. So were you able to then communicate to people the difference between yoga
Yes,
and
yes.
Pilates in
It
like
took me a
first
while
few
because people were like,
months?
तो क्या करते हो आप?
Okay.
इसमें प्राणायाम होता है? ऐसे नहीं, इसमें प्राणायाम नहीं होता है. But Pilates is very heavily focused on breathing. So they couldn't understand if प्राणायाम नहीं कर रहे हो तो फिर breathing में कैसे focus है, right? And then I would say
Right.
Pilates is very friendly for your back and for your spine. We're very spine focused and very posture focused. But हम तो योगा में भी spine करते हैं, हम तो योगा में भी भुजंगासन करते हैं. So to be able to communicate all of these differences in a simple way, it took me some time.
Hmm.
Uh,
So to develop your
yes.
communication also as to how to like tell them, like I'll teach a 5-year-old
Yeah,
what's the difference,
absolutely.
kind of thing.
So I
Okay.
had to perfect
So
that.
you had to develop
Yeah.
your
In fact, I made a
communication also.
FAQ
Okay.
after 3 months because I kept coming across the same questions again and again. And that became the template of our sales pitch today. So whenever we receive a call in the studio now, so our sales team now, in
Perfect.
fact, still refers to the same FAQ because the questions haven't changed too much.
Wow, that's a great sales tip. That's one of the best insights. That yes, you have to record and capture the common questions that you get from your
Yes.
prospects, and put it as a FAQ or objection handling
And like
document
you
kind of a
said, keep
thing.
it so simple
So that
that a
helps
5-year-old
people.
can understand. Don't make
Yeah.
it too complicated.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Wow. So from that time when you were just rethinking, oh, whether it's a good idea to run two batches or not, to today when you are like back to back, packed with sessions, like it was difficult for us also to find time for this
Yeah.
podcast recording, and now you are running two studios. So what has the arc been like? What has the journey been? If you can just in a capsule form
Roshni,
share
I
with
would
us.
say the core values remain the same. Till today, we are hyper
Mm-hmm.
focused, knowing that Pilates is our core product and the client is our primary
Okay.
focus. So we still operate
Okay.
the same way, where the intention is to give personalized attention to every woman who walks into the studio, be it a personal class, of course, or be it a group session.
Right.
There's a lot of
So, like, if to understand how you deliver the personalized attention, like, how many people are there in the studio at a time?
it can vary. It can be from 10 people to perhaps 4 people. It can vary. So the maximum group
Okay.
size,
Okay.
depending on what kind of session you're doing, can be 4 or it can be up to 10.
Okay.
But the process remains the same, where there is a lot of emphasis on collecting the health history of the client even before she takes her first session, and therefore understanding what the injuries are or what the health history has been, and then also understanding their goals.
Mm-hmm.
Why is she coming to the studio? Why is she looking at Pilates?
So, this is an interaction you have with
Before
them at the time of signing
before they
up,
even step into
before
their
signing
first
up.
class. So this is
Wow.
a rigorous thing that we follow
Okay.
at the time of even when they before they come for the
Okay.
first session. And if it's something complicated in terms of health or something, then there is actually a separate consultation that we do. So even before they do their first
Hmm.
class, there's an initial consultation. So we understand better why they're
Hmm.
coming into the studio and how we might need to tweak what we offer to what they need, what kind of group
Mm.
sessions will work for them depending on their health history and their goals. So when they walk into the class, we are quite clear, okay, this is the client's background, this is the health history, this is what she can possibly do, and this is what she may not be able to do at all. So when I'm doing a class
Mm.
program along with the 10 other people who are attending the class, let's say I know Roshni is coming and Roshni suffered an elbow injury last month. I know that Roshni can't do
Mm.
planks, but I have planned planks for the rest of the class. So how do I get Roshni to now do the planks so that she doesn't feel left out? So I have already planned for all of this when you walk into the class.
Wow. Wow. So you have to have that customer focus all the
Absolutely.
time. So when you have this customer focus, like individual attention, so what is your customer retention like? Like people do keep signing up or renewing
I would say it's
their
quite healthy. It's
subscription or
quite healthy.
wow,
And what you also have
nice.
to keep in mind is that we are also a movement form. So what I have seen now over the last 12 years is that the same people will do Pilates for a few years or a few months. Then they will take a break. They will go into something else. They will do that. But I always find them coming
Mm.
back. I always either find them
Mm.
coming
Mm.
back or
Yeah.
clients who have left even, let's say, 7 years ago are still in touch, who will say, I'm doing this now, but I still remember all the things that you taught us about how to keep our bodies safe or how to engage or how to breathe. And we still use that in our day to day lives. That for me is a bigger takeaway.
Mm. Yes, that's a good win. That is a great
Yeah.
win actually. People coming back after 7 years, and I think the fact that you said that it's a community that you have created around, that's a big pull, I believe, for especially a women client
Yes.
based. Um, so Taru, taking a little segue here to talk about specifically about the growth strategies. So, like earlier, you said, okay, you were right doing the flyers and everything. So, from there to now, 12, 13 years later, what has changed in terms of how you are marketing and growing your business? Because I believe now from one studio, you've expanded into two studios, right? So, what is now your, of course, word of mouth is one thing, but beyond that, what are the kind of activities you are
Honestly,
doing?
Roshni, word of mouth has been our biggest marketing tool. Right from the early
Yes.
days to today, nothing can take the word of mouth's place.
Mm.
But in terms of other things, earlier social media was not such a big factor. So we were relying a lot
Yes.
more on newspaper inserts and possibly just the internal condominium email lists to spread the word about what we were doing. And now today it's more about social media for sure. So
Okay.
mostly Instagram is a primary way that our audience is connected to and how we reach out to them. But again, like I said, I would
Mm-hmm.
still put less emphasis on that and more emphasis on the word of mouth.
Okay.
That gives us business and client referrals. That still remains a bigger
Mm-hmm.
growth strategy, which I
Makes
think
sense.
is a
Makes sense.
very healthy reflection of how your business is doing. Because if your clients are happy, I would suppose that you're doing well. And you would agree with me, if you're
Mm.
unhappy with a product, you would immediately go and leave a
Yeah.
feedback that this didn't work for me, right?
Yes.
And I'm unhappy with
Yes.
this. But if a client is happy, it takes a little bit more effort for them to actually go and talk about it and leave a review or leave a feedback, right? Because you're like, it's working well for me. I really love it.
Mm.
So you may not do a Google review, so to speak, but you will definitely go and talk about it to 10 other women. When they're like, oh my God, you're looking so
Mm-hmm.
great. And what have you been doing? And your skin is glowing and you're looking like 10 years younger and things like that. So yeah, word of mouth has been
Yeah.
our biggest.
So yeah, that validation from peers, and when people give good feedback like this, so people do tend to say that okay, this is what I'm doing new. But from your end, are there any focused activities or strategies you have to spread to help people spread this good word about the business, maybe testimonials, reviews? Is there a special focus on getting that from
From a
your
marketing
clients?
perspective,
Yes, yes.
yes, we do have a testimonial segment, but we are not heavily dependent on that. Uh,
Okay, so
it's
it's
very
organic,
organic, actually. Yeah.
based on
I
the
think what has really
clients.
helped us
Okay.
also is the fact that we have been able to differentiate ourselves as leaders in women health and spreading that knowledge and awareness. So
Mm-hmm.
people look at us as
Okay.
experts in women health. And that has also helped us a lot in making our brand more visible. So deeper
Mm.
understanding of, like something like nowadays, diastasis recti is something that is being talked about a lot. So diastasis recti is a condition which will happen typically after childbirth, where the abdominal wall will get separated and you get this big gap in your belly. And then people or women are not told that there are ways to heal it. And if you don't heal it, there are a lot of other health complications that start happening as indigestion, lower back pain, lack of stamina, and of course that loose skin that you see hanging. So the mummy tummy. So women will do diets, they will
Yeah,
start
yeah.
doing cardio, they will start doing everything, not realizing that they have DR. And we've actually helped
Okay.
clients who've had DR for 20 years. So they had a child 20 years ago, but they still have DR, which has now led to multiple
Mm-hmm.
complications, right? So when people see, yeah, okay, red mat, yes, they understand something about DR, and I've just had a baby, and I want to make sure that when I'm getting stronger again, I make sure that I'm healing this if I have it, right?
Mm.
Or the customization of the classes
Right.
that might be needed if I'm coming back to you after having broken my leg. How will you help me recover my
Mm.
strength? So I think having been seen as an expert, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, hang on. So how do
Yeah.
you drive this education on a daily basis? Like, is it like during the
I've lost
classes,
you
the
again, Roshni.
interactions, the chat
You're
that you
back.
have with clients, or is there content you are creating on social? How does the education part work?
I would say that's happening at three different levels.
Okay.
The first is at the trainer level. So the team is heavily invested into learning and deep diving into what they teach.
Okay.
So for example, when we onboard a new trainer, they have to undergo 100-hour study capsule. So they have put in
Superb.
100 hours of studying and practice before they get on to start teaching a client.
Wow.
That's one aspect. So they're already very well versed with that. The second level is, of course, through client interaction within the studio. So a lot of our classes will have elements of, um, this is the muscle that we are focusing on. If this is an injury that you have, then this is what you should not be doing or you should be doing. If you're feeling tired, then this is how you modify. So there's a lot of this informal education that continues even through the exercises and the classes that we are doing. And the third, of course,
Right.
is through the social media. So
Okay.
we do tend to talk a lot about why you should be doing cycle syncing for your workouts, why you should be knowing about DR, why it's okay to work out during your periods, or why it's not okay to work out during your periods. So there's a lot of that informal education that also goes through our social media handles.
So what I understand from you is that driving of this education is very important to again maintain that customer centricity, as well as helping you being seen as the expert and the thought leader and the industry influencer, so that people can believe and trust you more, and when they trust you more, they tend to easily buy
Absolutely. There
from
has
you.
to be
Yeah.
faith in the product and the
So
brand.
yeah, absolutely. Taking another route now to our discussion, Taru, you expanded from one to the second studio, right? Now, maintaining and running one studio in itself is a big task. So how did you find the courage to just take on one more headache and
You
just to
know,
work on the unit economics of it?
yeah, no, I went to a cloning institute and they cloned me. No, honestly, at some point in time, we were actually running three studios. So
Oh,
pre-COVID, we had a studio
wow.
in Delhi as well, which we had to close because of COVID.
Yes.
But it was a huge leap of faith, Roshni. I remember I had gone for a training and I was sitting with my teacher, and this was 4 years into having opened my first studio. And I was
Okay.
talking to him and I was like, the demand is growing and I don't know how to sort of handle it. And I know that we have demand for what we do, but I'm just so scared of expansion because it's not just about opening a second studio. It's about making your workload 4 times more,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
It's not just doubling your workload. You're actually tripling or quadrupling your workload. And he just looked at me and he says, if not today, then when?
Okay.
And that was such a moment of reflection for me because honestly, to grow, you're never ready. There's
So beautiful.
always this
Yes.
fear that will hold you back. Anything new that you want to do, especially with women, there's this huge imposter syndrome that we carry around, or the fear of failure. What if people here like me, but over there will not like me? What if they really see through, I really don't know what I'm doing? Or they start comparing me with somebody else.
Yes.
You know,
Yes. We will
and
give
of
so
course the
many excuses
cost.
not to do the what we are supposed to do.
Yeah, and the cost is always such a huge factor
Yeah.
because you're
Yeah.
prefixing the cost to your return. Whenever
Yeah.
you're looking at an expansion strategy, you
Yeah.
always have to invest a lot more before you start getting the returns.
Yeah. So
So all of these,
how did you ensure that? Can you just talk to us a little bit about the unit economics, or like how did you maintain that profitability in your leisures? How does that work?
so we had a couple of things going for us at that point in time. One was, of course, the demand was already existing.
Okay.
So we were in Nirvana and we were already getting demand from, the other side of Gurgaon, closer to Galleria and Golf Course Road. So in fact, people were traveling all the way to come to our
Wow. Wow.
studios to
Okay.
do the classes. So we already knew that we had a small client base.
Okay.
That was one. Two, I had a team of teachers who were teaching the Nirvana clientele. So we did have capacity
Okay.
where we already had qualified teachers who could have moved from Nirvana and distributed their time to another location. Third, of course, was the location. We were extremely mindful because in a fitness spectrum specifically, location is the most important driver. It's a
Yes.
matter of habit. If somebody has to come and do classes with you 3 times or 4 times a week, the location can't be more than 10 to 15 minutes away from where you live. So we were
Okay.
quite mindful of the location and the other amenities like parking had to be available wherever we set up.
Right.
And we took a punt on a slightly bigger space
Okay.
because we knew that the golf course area had more capacity as compared to Nirvana. So we took a punt on a slightly bigger space. And yeah, within 6 months we were breaking even.
Super, super.
So
So you would say that a good assessment of what the demand is
absolutely.
like, and
Yeah.
then you already had the capacity of expansion built in, and then it was also the smart play of real estate, because for a fitness studio or for a retail outlet, real estate is what counts more.
I
So
also have to
that's the
add in
trump card.
here, no, and I also have to add in here, we invested a lot in technology. So we were
Okay,
already
how?
geared to meet the higher demand that we were anticipating. Because
Okay,
earlier everything was being done manually. Like, for example, if people had to renew their memberships, or we had to
okay,
track how many classes they were doing. In fact, I still have those cards as keepsake where I would manually
right.
write down the client name, the class she attended, make
Okay.
them sign off, or maintain a ledger where they were making payments and I was maintaining that ledger. We
Okay.
moved to technology and
So when did you make this
systems.
move? Like before starting the second studio?
It happened simultaneously because we
Okay,
realized, so
interesting.
as we were opening and as we were growing, we started investing in technology right away
So
because we
was it
knew,
a heavy investment that you had to do in it, or it was like manageable?
I would say it was slightly big,
Okay.
slightly big. So yeah, we did take a punt on the costs and the investments that we were doing.
Yeah, yeah.
But like I said, we were already sort of clued in into the market that we were going into.
Hmm. Yeah.
I already had an idea of what kind of clientele percentage we would grow if we opened a second studio setup.
Yeah,
But
the
still, it
reason
was
I, the
scary.
reason I asked this is
Yeah,
because yeah, it is very important for us when we are like expanding. Expanding is growth, right? While you are having that eye on, okay, this is the kind of sales figures I will have. You also have a heavy cost that you are incurring. Like if you are investing into technology, it was a big cost for you. So how will you break even? So that kind of an analysis you have to have done before even getting into the expansion
yeah,
mode.
yeah. And I was also very clear, Roshni, that if I didn't break even in 6 months and I didn't recover the money that I was investing on all of these separate things, I will close it down.
Super.
So I was not
So you that
married to
have
the
had that
thought. Yeah,
clarity.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
For sure.
Awesome.
Because I think sometimes as entrepreneurs, we get so emotionally attached to the outcome that it's very hard for us to pivot or take a step back and regroup and re strategize. So I wasn't married to the thought that I have to continue this even if I continue making losses. I was very clear that if it didn't take off the way I had anticipated, I will close it down, go back to being a single studio, and then perhaps have a better research and a better idea of the costs involved before I go back. In fact, that is the same strategy that I'm playing on right now for Delhi. Like in
Hmm.
Delhi, we were operational from 2018 to 2020 till COVID
Hmm.
happened.
Hmm.
And in fact, we were doing really, really well in Delhi. But we had to close it down because of the cost impact that we were taking
Of
of
course.
having to sustain three rentals through COVID and the team sustenance, you know. And it's now been 4 years and we are
And you are
still
planning to
exploring.
relaunch?
Absolutely. But I'm being extremely mindful that my cost incurrence can't be so high that I completely buckle under it
Yeah.
just because I want to go back to Delhi. So I want to be very mindful of where I open the studio, what the studio offerings are going to be. It's not going to be necessarily the same as what we do here in Gurgaon. It might tweak a bit, it might change depending on the client demand that we have in Delhi, so on and so forth.
Interesting, interesting. And
Yeah.
now that you have touched upon like the pandemic time and the pivots made, so can you talk to us a little bit about the pivots you made, especially after the close down and the lockdown? Because yes, fitness, gyms was one thing which was like badly
Yeah.
suffered during that time.
Yeah.
So what has
So,
changed for you after it?
the interesting thing around the pandemic was we were already experimenting with this online class module. I
Acha, okay.
remember in November of 2019, I was taking a few online classes because we had demand coming from outside of Delhi. And so we thought, how do we kind of cater to that demand? And I took some classes online. And so we were already experimenting with the technology for conducting not in-person sessions, which was not very common at that point in time, pre-COVID, mind you.
Yes.
So COVID happened, the shutdown happened. We were online with our classes a day later because we were already primed. So
Wow.
we shut the studio down, and a day later, we had three group classes running per day.
Super.
And so we just transitioned all the in-studio clients to online. And of course, online has its own challenges. It's not the same thing as teaching in person. And we are also very in-studio heavy because we use a lot of equipment to conduct classes. So that was definitely an element that we had to see. How do we cover that gap in client experience? So, but it worked out really well. In fact, we've seen a change in client behavior when it comes to fitness post-pandemic
Okay.
where the convenience of getting to work out from your house is now pretty high, especially if you have a really, tight work and home schedule. So a lot of our clients have chosen to stay with the online module, and we're still running it today. And
Okay.
we run it as a hybrid where some clients do a couple of classes in studio, but then they also do a couple of classes online.
Interesting. So, what is that split like for in terms of percentage? 20, 30% are still online,
I
30%
would
are offline.
say for people who are doing in studio classes, about 20% of their sessions will happen online. But
Hmm.
then we have a completely dedicated online clientele who, even though if they're living in Delhi or Gurgaon, choose to do classes only online because of the convenience and the access.
So, for anyone who is looking to get into this space of fitness studios or trainings, instructing, would you suggest that they should start off with an offline version, online version, hybrid version? Uh, what is your
It
experience?
depends on the person's bandwidth,
Okay.
honestly. I see a lot of fitness influencers now doing this simply online. But honestly, Roshni, the experience that you have in person cannot be compared to what you get to do online. The personal energy, the availability of a teacher to see the micro movements that you're doing and to be able to correct that. And also, I think the biggest thing is the community space that you get to share with other people when
Yes.
you're attending a session in person is very
Yes.
different. So, if
Yes.
you're an extrovert
Yeah.
and you're wanting to get into the fitness space, I would definitely recommend you have to have an online presence for sure, but I would recommend a hybrid. And if you're an introvert and you don't have access to costs and you want to kind of experiment with how this fares before you do the heavy investment of renting a space and buying equipment and things like that, then definitely online is a better way to go.
Hmm. Super, super. So great, Tarun. Lots of insights here. Just now switching to the last phase or the concluding phase of our conversation. So jogging back into time when you transitioned from corporate to becoming an entrepreneur who was supposed to talk about her business, sell her brand, sell herself, educate her audience, like we said earlier, from Pune to CEO, everything you are doing, right? And you are wearing the seller hat as well. So, what was your
Yeah.
relationship with selling starting out, and how is it now?
Um, so I am an introvert. Okay, and I have never taken too well to doing BD, so to speak. I've always shied away from doing that. But I think what helped me was I am so passionate about what I do that when I start talking about Pilates, I actually have to be mindful to not go overboard. So I think that sort of helped me. That
True.
definitely helped me.
Okay.
Plus, I had the advantage of having my own experience with the product. So there is
Yes.
definitely a stamp of approval and relevance that comes into the person that I'm talking to. Um, and third, this was thanks to my mentors who always said that understand your client's needs first. And I was very mindful of that. And that would be my advice to anybody who is scared of sales or shies away from doing sales. Rather than
Right.
having a perspective that you have to go and sell yourself or you have to sell your product, walk into that call or that meeting with a mindset of, I need to understand what this client is seeking from me. The fact is that they're speaking to you on a call or they are meeting you in person already means you have a foot in the door. Take time to understand why they are even meeting with you and what are their existing needs where your product can help them. And how can you possibly even customize your product to help meet that need? Rather than being in this rush or nervousness to talk about everything that you have to offer without understanding what the other person might. Uh, for all you know, they might need a lot more than what you're offering, and there's your opportunity to expand.
Right. So beautifully said that if they are giving you the time, you already have the foot in the door. And take that opportunity not just to, in a hurry, sign up the client, but to first understand their needs. So if I can summarize what you've said is that if you have a personal story, that's a win. Then
Yes.
also passion to tell about your product, program, or service, and then the intention to understand the pain points and the needs of your customer. So those are very important aspects. Thank you for sharing that. And last question, what's your message to all the women entrepreneurs listening to this podcast? How can they fall in love with selling?
If you believe in your product, just go out and talk about it. And don't be scared because you all have to start somewhere. Take that first step.
Take that first step. Beautiful.
Don't be a
Thank you.
perfectionist. Yeah, don't be a perfectionist.
Yes. Don't get into the perfection paralysis. Yes.
Yes, yeah, you'll never be perfect. Your product will never be perfect.
True. Thank you so much, Taru. It's been such an insightful conversation, and I loved the way that you generously have shared your journey as well as the fact that what it was then, what it is now. So it was beautiful. Thank you so much for being here and spending your time with us.
Thank you so much for having me.